An estimated 700 Lebanese people have been killed in only a week as fighting between Israel and Hezbollah escalates.
US Vice President Kamala Harris slams suggestions that Kyiv should cede territory to Russia to strike a peace deal.
Puigdemont and Comyn lost their appeal to be acknowledged as MEPs in the European Parliament by a definitive decision of the European Court of Justice.
At the UN General Assembly, North Macedonia's president says the country's slow progress to EU accession is like waiting for Godot.
Nearly 700 people have been killed in Lebanon this week as fighting between Israel and Hezbollah escalates, according to the Lebanese Health Ministry. Israel has dramatically escalated strikes in that time, saying it is targeting Hezbollah's military capacities and senior Hezbollah commanders. Top Israeli officials have threatened to repeat the destruction of Gaza in Lebanon if Hezbollah attacks continue. Incoming fire from Lebanon into Israel continued on Friday, with one man suffering wounds from shrapnel. More than 200,000 people have been displaced in Lebanon since the war in Gaza began, according to the International Organization for Migration. The US, France and other allies jointly called for a 21-day ceasefire. However, Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu said Israel is striking Hezbollah with full force and won't stop until its goals are achieved. Cyprus says it will facilitate the arrival of Lebanese citizens seeking protection if necessary amidst an increasingly tense situation in the Middle East. The issue was discussed in a meeting between the Cypriot president and the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees. Cyprus was described as a pillar of stability by the Lebanese Prime Minister in a meeting with the country's president. Greece's Prime Minister also spoke with his Lebanese counterpart, expressing support for an immediate 21-day ceasefire proposed by US and European allies. Lebanese citizens who arrived in Athens on a flight from Beirut described the dire situation in the country.
The situation, as you all know, it's not that good. Israel is still attacking us, and nobody is supporting us.
Especially from South Lebanon, they are leaving their home. There are a lot of killed there.
I was so scared to drive to the airport because it's within South Lebanon that they are bombing over there. So, thank God no problems on the way, and thank God they didn't strike the airport. I'm happy.
European governments are urging their citizens in Lebanon to leave immediately due to escalating hostilities between Hezbollah and Israel, which show no signs of easing.
US Vice President Kamala Harris has slammed suggestions that Kyiv should cede territory for the sake of peace with Moscow. Speaking in Washington, Harris unleashed the criticism of Donald Trump's controversial push for Ukraine to quickly cut a deal to end the war.
These proposals are the same of those of Putin. And let us be clear, they are not proposals for peace. Instead, they are proposals for surrender, which is dangerous and unacceptable.
Trump has criticized US assistance for Ukraine, praised Russian President Vladimir Putin, and faulted Zelensky for the ongoing bloodshed. But he rejected Harris's criticisms and insisted that he only wants to stop the horror show that's gone on. At the presser with Harris, Zelensky said a lasting and just peace was a top priority for Ukraine. Zelensky was in Washington to present the White House and Congress with his plans for reaching an endgame in the war by improving Ukraine's chances on the battlefield. And addressing the UN General Assembly on Thursday, EU Council President Charles Michel said the bloc would support Ukraine for as long as necessary. He also urged China to reconsider its support for Russia and use its influence to ensure that the United Nations Charter is respected.
A night of intense Russian shelling hit several cities in Ukraine on Wednesday. At least 8 people were wounded in an overnight attack on Zaporizhia, including a 14-year-old boy, regional head Ivan Fedorov said Thursday morning. Ukraine's emergency service says 12 residential buildings were damaged in the city and 18 people were evacuated. Videos show heavily damaged houses, windows blown out, and walls pierced with shrapnel. A separate drone attack on Ivano-Frankivsk damaged the city's power grid. 4 central streets of the city and some of the adjacent ones are without power. Some of the city's educational institutions will have power outages for at least a day, and trolley buses have also stopped running on some routes. Ukraine's air defenses also battled drones and missiles over Ukraine's capital, Kyiv, for over 5 hours. In total, Russia launched 6 missiles and 78 drones at Ukraine overnight from Wednesday to Thursday, Ukraine's Air Force said. It said defenses destroyed 4 of the missiles and 66 drones in the air.
Renewable energy sources are under particular threat as part of growing hybrid warfare. Some of the technology is relatively new, so it's more vulnerable. And according to NATO officials, renewable energy is targeted as it represents a shift away from often Russian fossil fuels. Jönköping Energy in Sweden provides 40% of all energy to the region through renewable energy, hydro, wind and solar power for 186,000 people. It's working alongside NATO under the Nordic Pine exercise, helping participating nations prevent and react to cyber and other hybrid attacks.
The attacker is more and more advanced, and I think some years ago people could say, no, we are so small, they will not hit us. Today, the system, the bots, etc., they can hit anybody. We can talk about if you leave your system open without any kind of firewall, it can take seconds before you're hit because they found you.
Cyber attacks from ransomware and also disinformation from either state and non-state groups is increasingly common as a means of doing harm to one's enemy without direct violence on the battlefield.
Cyber attacks by Russia during the invasion of Ukraine 10 years ago were a major wake-up call to the renewable energy sector. NATO and its partners now very much focus on the threat of hybrid warfare and the impact this has on society.
Ransomware is a business. The other thing is, the dependency of electricity everywhere. We can't be without it. So in that case, you can disturb a society very much by disturbing the electricity. And I think if you disturb the society, you will make people scary as well. What is going on? When will we get the electricity back again, etc. So I think it's a very, very good way to create a mess if you would like to.
The NATO-led Nordic Pine exercise is for the private and public sector, including research institutes. It concludes that the challenge of hybrid war, in particular cyber attacks, is best met with prevention and preparedness. And key to that, they say, is constant communication between governments, the private sector, the general public and the military command. Shona Murray, Euronews, Jönköping, Sweden.
The European Court of Justice dismisses the appeal of Catalan pro-independence politicians Carles Puigdemont and Toni Comín to be considered MEPs, which was filed in 2019. The Court of Justice believes that the lower general court of the EU acted correctly in considering that the President of the Parliament should follow the official list of MEPs that came from the document sent by the member state. In 2019, Puigdemont and Comín won a seat in the European elections, but having fled to Belgium in 2017 after the Catalan independence referendum, they were unable to abide by the Spanish constitution, a key step in order to appear in the document sent to the European Parliament. The result that appeared in the Spanish electoral body is seen valid, but the European Parliament considered that the official list was only the one sent to them by Spain.
Same rights and freedoms.
The decision is particularly relevant for Comín, who ran in the last elections for the European Parliament and won, but he has so far been unable to take his seat, and it looks like he will remain so after the ruling.
North Macedonia's Prime Minister has reacted angrily to reports that his country's European Union accession bid has hit a new hurdle because of a dispute with Bulgaria. Prime Minister Hristijan Mikoski said the EU was trying to dictate what his country should do and suggested he wouldn't accept any further delay to membership talks. Those comments follow reports that EU ambassadors in Brussels decided to push ahead with Albania's EU accession process independently of North Macedonia's. The EU started membership talks with the two Balkan countries in 2022, but North Macedonia's bid was delayed by a dispute with Bulgaria over Balkan history, language and culture. To break the impasse, the previous government in Skopje accepted a Bulgarian demand to insert in North Macedonia's constitution a reference to a Bulgarian ethnic minority. And in her speech at the UN General Assembly, North Macedonia's President Gordana Silinovska-Davkova said the path to EU membership was like waiting for Godot.
Od našите evropski и strateški partneri očekujeme разбирање и праведно деблокирање на процесот на преговорите за членство во Европската унија, отфрлање на двојните стандарди и почитување на сопствените принципи и вредности вградени во основните уставни документи.
The country's EU path was also blocked for years by Greece over another dispute over history and heritage. It was settled in 2018 after North Macedonia changed its name from the previous Macedonia.